The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns of Brynmere Pavilion, a jewel of Art Deco elegance nestled in the Sussex hills. It was the summer of 1932, and Lady Eleanor Brynmere's annual tea party buzzed with the clink of fine china and murmured pleasantries among the elite. Lady Eleanor, resplendent in pearls and a lavender gown, lifted her teacup with a gracious smile. To enduring friendships, she toasted, her voice carrying over the string quartet. Chapter 1. The Shadow of Suspicion. The sun dipped low over the Sussex hills, casting a golden haze across the manicured lawns of Brynmere Pavilion. It was the summer of 1932, and the pavilion, a dazzling Art Deco masterpiece of white stone and curved glass, stood as a beacon of elegance amidst the rolling meadows. Its terrace, framed by wrought iron balustrades and blooming roses, hummed with the clatter of fine bone china and the soft strains of a string quartet playing Elgar. Lady Eleanor Brynmere's annual tea party, a fixture of high society, drew a constellation of guests, lords and ladies, financiers and minor aristocrats, their laughter mingling with the scent of Darjeeling and lavender. Lady Eleanor herself presided over the affair with regal poise. At 52, she remained a vision in her lavender gown, her auburn hair swept into an elegant chignon, pearls gleaming at her throat. Her late husband, Sir Henry Brynmere, had built a shipping empire, leaving her vast estates and a reputation for philanthropy tinged with ruthless financial acumen. Yet, beneath her gracious smile, there were whispers, debts mounting, alliances fraying, secrets buried in the shadows of her opulent life. She raised her teacup, the delicate porcelain catching the fading light, and proposed a toast. To enduring friendships, she declared, her voice clear and commanding, carrying over the music. The guests echoed her, their cups clinking in unison. But as she sipped, a shadow crossed her face. Her eyes wide barked orders to the stunned guests. Right then, nobody leaves. We've a murder on our hands, and I'll have answers before the night's out. His notebook was already open, his pencil scribbling furiously as he surveyed the scene. The terrace, now cordoned by his constables, seemed to shrink under his scrutiny, the roses wilting in the evening chill. The doctor, summoned from the nearby village, confirmed the grim truth. Cyanide, swift and merciless, had laced Lady Eleanor's tea. Death had come within minutes, likely administered moments before her toast. The question hung heavy. Who among the glittering assembly had turned a ritual of hospitality into an act of treachery? Japp's eyes narrowed as he gathered the principal suspects, their faces pale under the pavilion's crystal chandeliers, now casting eerie shadows across the mahogany-paneled dining hall. First was Reginald Ashford, Lady Eleanor's nephew and heir apparent. A dashing man of 32 with a pencil mustache and a tailored suit that spoke of Savile Row, Reginald had the charm of a matinee idol, but the reputation of a spendthrift. His Bentley, parked ostentatiously on the gravel drive, was the latest in a string of extravagances funded by his aunt's generosity. Yet that morning, witnesses had overheard a heated exchange between them in the pavilion's rose garden. "She was cutting me off," Reginald admitted under Japp's relentless questioning, his hands trembling as he lit a cigarette. "Said my debts were a disgrace to the family name. But murder? Preposterous. I'd sooner sell my soul than harm her." His alibi was thin, seen lingering near the kitchen before the tea service, though he claimed he was fetching a drink. Japp scribbled, unconvinced. Next was Miss Clara Hewitt, Lady Eleanor's companion and secretary. A mousy woman in her late 20s, Clara's plain wool dress and wire-rimmed spectacles stood in stark contrast to the opulence around her. Her role was indispensable. She managed Lady Eleanor's correspondence, organized her charities, and prepared the tea service herself. Yet whispers among the staff painted her as resentful, her devotion tinged with desperation. Tonics that sat on her bedside table. Could one have been swapped for poison? Absurd, he scoffed when Jap pressed him. My dispensary is secure, and cyanide's not in my kit. Yet, his eyes flickered when asked about his debts. Rumors linked him to unsavory bookmakers in London. Had Lady Eleanor, aware of his troubles, threatened to expose him? Langston's alibi was solid. He was mingling with guests during the tea preparation, but Jap noted his proximity to the tray during the toast. Mrs. Edith Poole, the housekeeper, was a stout woman in her 50s, her face etched with the weariness of decades in service. Her black dress and starched apron gave her an air of authority, but her perpetual scowl hinted at deeper grievances. She had served the Brynmere family since Sir Henry's time, yet never received the recognition she felt she deserved. Overheard grumbling about ungrateful gentry, she admitted to Jap that Lady Eleanor had recently audited the household accounts, uncovering minor discrepancies. Petty theft, she called it. Mrs. Poole spat, her hands clenching. After 30 years of loyalty, had resentment driven her to a darker act? She claimed to have been in the kitchen during the tea service, but a footman swore she'd slipped onto the terrace moments before the toast. As Jap interrogated, the pavilion's atmosphere grew oppressive, the summer breeze turning chill as night enveloped the estate. The guests, confined to the drawing room, whispered among themselves, their silk gowns and tailored suits now seeming like costumes in a grim charade. Lady Eleanor's life, so meticulously curated, unraveled in fragments. Her philanthropy masked a ruthless streak. She had recently foreclosed on a tenant farmer, sparking local outrage. Her will, rumored to favor Reginald, was under revision, with whispers of a new beneficiary. And then there was the matter of her personal life. A widow for a decade, yet gossip hinted at a secret suitor, perhaps one among the guests. A telegram interrupted Jap's questioning, its sharp arrival slicing through the tension. Hercule Poirot, the renowned Belgian detective, rushed to investigate, their torches flickering in the drizzle. There, beneath a gnarled willow, lay a single glove, monogrammed with an R. Reginald's, or a cunning plant to mislead? The cry, now silent, left an echo of dread. Had someone tampered with evidence, or was the killer still at large, watching from the shadows? The pavilion's elegance masked a deepening menace, and the truth remained tantalizingly out of reach. Chapter 2. The Little Gray Cells Awaken. The morning sun pierced the mist shrouding Brynmere Pavilion, its golden rays glinting off the Art Deco spires that crowned the estate. The Sussex hills, cloaked in emerald, stretched beyond the manicured lawns. But the air within the pavilion remained heavy with suspicion. The previous night's discovery, a monogrammed glove in the willow grove, had deepened the enigma of Lady Eleanor Brynmere's murder. The terrace, where her poisoned teacup had shattered, was now a silent witness, cordoned by Inspector Jap's constables. The guests, confined to the pavilion's opulent interiors, whispered behind gloved hands, their silk gowns and tailored suits ill-suited to the grim tableau. Hercule Poirot arrived precisely at 10, stepping from a chauffeured Rolls-Royce with the air of a man unruffled by chaos. His egg-shaped head tilted slightly, his waxed mustache impeccable, and his green eyes gleamed with quiet intensity. Clad in a pinstriped suit and polished patent leather shoes, he surveyed the pavilion's facade, its white stone glowing like a beacon of order amidst deceit. "Mon ami Jap," he greeted, bowing to the inspector, who stood on the gravel drive, notebook in hand. "It is the poisoned tea that calls me from my repose in Brighton. Ah, the English and their tea. Such a civilized ritual, yet so ripe for villainy." Jap grunted, his Cockney drawl thick with exasperation. "You'll have your work cut out, Poirot. This lot's a nest of vipers, and that glove's got everyone pointing fingers." Tea tray, preserved by Jap's men, held a dozen cups, all pristine, save Lady Eleanor's, which bore a faint, powdery residue. "Curieux," Poirot murmured, producing a magnifying glass. "The cyanide. It was in her cup alone. But how was it delivered? And by whom?" He noted the tray's position, central, accessible during the pre-toast mingle. A footman confirmed that Clara had prepared the tea, but guests milled freely, their hands brushing the tray as they chatted. Opportunity abounded. Reginald Ashford was summoned first. The nephew, his pencil mustache twitching, lit a cigarette with a trembling hand. "Monsieur Ashford," Poirot said, leaning forward. "Your aunt's will. It favors you, no? But perhaps not entirely." Reginald flushed, his Oxford accent clipped. "She threatened to change it, yes. I'd borrowed funds for investments. Motor cars, mostly. She called me reckless, said I'd squandered her trust." His alibi, fetching a whiskey from the kitchen, crumbled when a maid recalled seeing him near the tea tray, adjusting his cufflinks. "I was nowhere near her cup," he protested, but his eyes darted to the side. Poirot smiled faintly. "A red herring, perhaps. Or the truth, poorly disguised." Miss Clara Hewitt followed, her plain wool dress stark against the pavilion's grandeur. Her spectacles glinted as she clutched a locket at her throat, her voice barely audible. "I steeped the tea, Monsieur Poirot, but I left the tray unattended. Anyone could have approached it." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And this locket, mademoiselle? It contains a photograph, I see. Of Lady Eleanor, perhaps? Affection? Or obsession?" Clara paled, her fingers tightening. "It's private," she whispered, but her hesitation spoke volumes. A parlour-maid later confided. Clara had been seen lingering over Lady Eleanor's desk, reading letters not meant for her eyes. Was it loyalty? Or something darker? Dr. Victor Langston, silver-haired and composed, dismissed suspicions with a wave. "Cyanide? From my dispensary? Absurd." "I've done." Poirot noted her access to the kitchen where the tea was prepared. A footman swore she'd been on the terrace, adjusting the tray's napkins. "Lies!" she retorted, but her hands trembled. Was it anger or guilt? Poirot's investigation extended to the pavilion's grounds where the willow grove loomed, its drooping branches swaying in the breeze. The monogrammed glove, marked with an R, was a tantalizing clue. Reginald swore he'd lost no gloves, but his wardrobe held a matching pair, one suspiciously absent. A red herring, Poirot mused, or a deliberate plant. The grove yielded another find, a crumpled note half buried under leaves reading, "Your sins will find you." The handwriting was elegant, almost feminine, but unsigned. Clara's, Poole's, or another's. Inside, Poirot explored Lady Eleanor's study, a sanctuary of leather-bound books and rosewood furniture. A locked drawer, forced open by Jap, revealed a diary. Its pages spoke of tension. Reginald grows reckless. Debts mount. I must act. Another entry hinted at betrayal. C knows my secret. The affair long buried. Clara? Or someone else? The diary's lock suggested Lady Eleanor feared prying eyes. Poirot's fingers tapped his temple, his little gray cells whirring. The motive is not singular, he murmured to Jap. Greed, yes, but also vengeance. Perhaps love betrayed. The day waned, the pavilion's chandeliers casting long shadows. Jap, frustrated, leaned on Reginald's shaky alibi, ready to arrest him. That glove's damning, Poirot! But the detective shook his head. Too obvious, mon ami. The killer is cleverer, weaving a tapestry of deception. He requested the guest list, cross-referencing alibis. A minor guest, Lord Carraway, mentioned an odd detail. During the toast, Dr. Langston had offered Lady Eleanor a sugar cube from his own pocket. The pavilion's Art Deco elegance, its curved glass and gleaming spires, seemed muted, as if the very walls sensed the treachery within. The murder of Lady Eleanor Brynmere, poisoned by cyanide in her tea, had cast a pall over the once vibrant terrace. Now the willow grove beyond, a labyrinth of drooping branches and mossy paths, beckoned Hercule Poirot with its secrets. The previous night's discoveries, the monogrammed glove, the cryptic note, and the shadowy figure in the study had tightened the web of suspicion. And the Belgian detective's little gray cells were ablaze with questions. Poirot, clad in a neatly pressed suit, his mustache a study in precision, stood at the edge of the grove with Inspector Jap. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves, the willows swaying like mourners in the breeze. "The method, Inspector," Poirot declared, his voice crisp despite the damp, "is order and method. We must reconstruct the timeline of this crime most foul." Jap, his trilby hat tilted against the rain, grunted. "Timeline's all well and good, Poirot, but that glove's got Reginald's name on it. He's our man, mark my words." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Perhaps, mon ami. But the obvious, it is often the deceptive." The coroner's report, delivered that morning, confirmed the cyanide's swift action. Death within minutes. The poison dissolved in Lady Eleanor's tea moments before her toast. A new clue emerged from the kitchen staff. A scone on the tea tray, untouched, bore traces of cyanide. A clumsy attempt at a broader poisoning, or a deliberate red herring? Poirot dismissed it with a wave. A diversion, Inspector. The killer targets Lady Eleanor alone. This scone, it is the smoke to obscure the fire. Yet, the clue gnawed at him. The killer's precision suggested a mind both bold and calculating. Poirot's interrogations resumed in the pavilion's library, where leather-bound volumes of Trollope and Hardy lined the walls. Their spines' dress clung damply to her frame, as if she'd ventured into the rain. Poirot's gaze lingered on her locket, its silver surface catching the firelight. "Mademoiselle, you prepared the tea. Tell me of this letter I hear of." "A letter from Lady Eleanor." Clara's hands twisted her handkerchief. She wrote of a marriage. To Dr. Langston. She showed it to me. Said it would change everything." The revelation stunned Jap. "Marriage. And cut you out, eh?" Clara's eyes flashed. "I served her faithfully. She deserved better than him. The letter, found in the study, confirmed her claim. Lady Eleanor planned to wed Langston, redirecting her fortune. Was Clara's devotion a mask for jealousy, or something deeper? Dr. Victor Langston, summoned to the library, maintained his composure, his silver hair gleaming under the chandelier. Marriage? Yes, Eleanor confided in me, he admitted, his voice smooth. But murder? Preposterous. I'm a physician, not a poisoner. Yet Poirot pressed. And these anonymous notes she received. Your sins will poison you. You knew of them, no? Langston nodded reluctantly. She showed me one, weeks ago. I thought them pranks. Poirot produced the note from the grove, its handwriting elegant, almost feminine. A graphologist, consulted by Japp, suggested a resemblance to Mrs. Poole's scrawl. But Langston's calm wavered when Poirot mentioned his missing vial. Stolen, perhaps, he muttered, but his hands betrayed a tremor. Mrs. Edith Poole, questioned in the servants' quarters, radiated resentment. The copper pots behind her gleamed, a stark contrast to her dour black dress. I served this family 30 years, she growled. And for what? Accusations of theft. She admitted overhearing arguments, Reginald's debts, Clara's pleas, even a gardener's dismissal over a petty grudge. That gardener, he threatened her, Poole said, deflecting. Said she'd pay for sacking him. Secret. The affair years ago. I fear exposure. Clara, presumably, but the initial was ambiguous. Another entry noted, the greenhouse. Strange plants there. I must investigate. The pavilion's greenhouse, a glass-domed haven of exotic flora, piqued Poirot's interest. Accompanied by Japp, he found rare datura plants, their seeds a potential source of cyanide. The gardener, sacked weeks prior, had tended them. A new suspect. But his alibi, working in a neighboring village, held firm. Japp, frustrated, leaned on the glove's evidence, arresting Reginald. He's our man, Poirot. Motive, opportunity, and that blasted R. But Poirot shook his head. Too obvious, Inspector. The killer weaves a clever web. He requested the tea tray's inventory. A sugar bowl, overlooked until now, contained cubes unlike the others, slightly irregular, as if tampered. The poison, Poirot mused. Perhaps in the sugar, not the tea itself. A guest recalled Dr. Langston offering Lady Eleanor a cube from his pocket. Coincidence or calculation? As twilight fell, the pavilion's chandeliers flickered, the storm's rumble growing closer. Poirot paced the library, his mind assembling the puzzle. The diary, the glove, the note, the sugar, each a thread in a tapestry of deceit. But the night brought a new shock. A scream pierced the silence, shrill and desperate, from the guest wing. Japp and Poirot raced upstairs, finding Miss Clara Hewitt collapsed in her room, a vial of cyanide clutched in her hand. Her pulse was faint, her face ashen. Suicide, Japp gasped. But Poirot's eyes narrowed. Or a silencing mon ami. The killer strikes again. Was Clara a victim, or had she staged her own poisoning to deflect suspicion? The truth, like the Willow Grove's shadows, remained elusive. Chapter 4. The Veil of Deception Lifts. The drizzle over Brynmere Pavilion had thickened into a relentless downpour, the rain lashing the estate's white stone walls and drumming against the curved glass of her up. Poirot's mustache twitched. No, Inspector. This is no suicide. Observe the vial. It is from the doctor's own supply. yet placed in her hand too conveniently. A stage, perhaps, to divert us. Clara, stirring weakly, muttered incoherently, her spectacles askew. Poirot leaned closer, catching a whispered word. Pool. Was it an accusation or delirium? The pavilion's drawing room, its velvet curtains drawn against the storm, became Poirot's stage. The suspects, Reginald Ashford, Dr. Langston, Mrs. Edith Poole, and the recovering Clara, gathered under the chandelier's flickering light, their faces a gallery of fear and defiance. Reginald, released on bail after his arrest over the monogrammed glove, paced like a caged panther, his pencil mustache quivering. "I was in the billiard room when Clara screamed," he protested, but a footman swore he'd seen him near her quarters earlier, adjusting his cufflinks. Dr. Langston, polishing his glasses, denied tampering with his own vials. "Theft, perhaps," he said, but his eyes avoided Poirot's. Mrs. Poole, her stout frame rigid, glared at the mention of her name. "I've done nothing but serve this house," she snapped, yet her hands twisted her apron nervously. Poirot paced, his polished shoes clicking on the parquet floor. "Mes amis, the puzzle assembles. The red herrings, the glove, the poisoned scone, the anonymous notes are but smoke. The key is the tea itself and the sugar cube that carried the cyanide." He revealed a breakthrough. Lady Eleanor's cup had contained a unique sugar cube, irregular in shape, laced with the poison. Clara, responsible for the tea tray, swore she'd used standard cubes. "Someone switched it," she whispered, her voice frail but insistent. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And who, mademoiselle, had access to such a cube?" Suspicion flickered toward Langston, who had offered Lady Eleanor a sugar cube from his pocket during the toast, a detail confirmed by Lord Carroway, a minor guest with a penchant for gossip. The engagement stunned the room, but Poirot probed further. "And your missing vial, docteur? Stolen or given?" Langston's silence was damning. Mrs. Poole, summoned again, crumbled under scrutiny. A maid revealed she'd seen Poole tampering with Langston's medical bag days before the murder. "I took a vial, yes," Poole confessed, tears welling. "To sell, not to kill. Times are hard." Her motive, resentment over Lady Eleanor's accusation of theft, grew sharper. The pavilion's accounts showed missing silver, and Eleanor's threat to dismiss her had stung deeply. "She called me disloyal," Poole sobbed. "After 30 years. But was theft her only crime?" Poirot's investigation led to the greenhouse, where datura plants offered a source of cyanide. The sacked gardener questioned in the village had an alibi, but his bitterness lingered. "She ruined me," he'd told a barmaid, though no evidence linked him to the tea. Another clue surfaced. A servant recalled Poole handling the sugar bowl, refilling it from a private stock. "Special cubes," she said, "for her ladyship," the servant noted. Poirot's mind whirred. The sugar cube, not the tea, was the killer's vessel, a subtle, deadly switch. The storm outside intensified, thunder rattling the pavilion's windows. Poirot gathered the suspects again, his voice cutting through the tension. "The killer is among us, weaving a tapestry of deceit. The glove, marked R, is too convenient. The scone, a distraction. The notes, a misdirection. But the sugar cube, it betrays the hand that placed it." He turned to Clara, now propped on a chaise, her face pale. "Mademoiselle, you spoke of Poole. Why?" Clara's eyes widened. "I saw her. Near the doctor's bag, before the tea." Poole gasped, her scowl collapsing into panic. Lies. I never. Before she could finish, Poirot's attention shifted to the diary's cryptic C. Was it Clara or another? A photograph in Clara's locket glimpsed early had fired. And why now? The truth, like the rain, was unrelenting, but still out of reach. Chapter 5. Threads of Truth. The gunshot that pierced the storm-soaked night reverberated through Brynmere Pavilion, shattering the fragile calm that had clung to its Art Deco halls. The rain lashed the Sussex estate, its white stone facade gleaming like a ghostly beacon under the lightning's flash. Hercule Poirot, his polished shoes splashing through puddles, led the charge to the study, Inspector Japp at his heels, their breaths sharp in the chill air. The suspects, Reginald Ashford, Miss Clara Hewitt, Dr. Victor Langston, and Mrs. Edith Poole, followed, their faces a mosaic of dread and suspicion. The pavilion, once a sanctuary of elegance, now pulsed with the menace of a second crime, its secrets unraveling like threads from a frayed tapestry. The study door swung open, revealing Dr. Langston, slumped over Lady Eleanor Brynmere's rosewood desk, a revolver in his limp hand, blood pooling beneath his silver hair. A note, scrawled in haste, lay beside him. I poisoned Eleanor for her fortune. Forgive me. Japp, his trilby hat askew, seized the note, his cockney growl triumphant. There's your confession, Poirot. Case closed. But Poirot's green eyes narrowed, his mustache twitching with disdain. No, Inspector. This is too neat, too convenient. Observe. The handwriting. It is not Langston's. And the gunpowder residue, absent from his hands. He knelt, inspecting the revolver. This is no suicide. It is a stage, set to deceive. The room, lit by a flickering gas lamp, felt claustrophobic, its leather-bound books and velvet drapes closing in. Langston stirred, his death revealed as a ruse. He had been grazed, not killed. The blood a theatrical smear from a shallow wound. A performance, Poirot declared, to halt our inquiry. Langston, pale but defiant, stammered. I was attacked. Not in the T, he mused, but in the cube, places with precision. Reginald, still under suspicion for the monogrammed glove, protested his innocence. I was in the billiard room, he insisted, but a maid's testimony placed him near Clara's room before her poisoning, weakening his alibi further. Poirot returned to the diary, its pages a cipher of motives. An entry read, C knows my secret. The affair years ago. I fear exposure. Clara's locket, glimpsed earlier, held not Lady Eleanor's photograph but that of a woman resembling her, perhaps a sister, tied to the affair. Mademoiselle, Poirot pressed. This locket, it is your mother, no? Connected to Lady Eleanor? Clara's eyes widened, her voice barely audible. She was Eleanor's half-sister, cast out. I learned only recently. The revelation stunned Japp. A secret heir? That's motive, Poirot. But Clara's poisoning, self-inflicted or staged, muddied her guilt. Dr. Langston's ties to Reginald's bookmakers grew clearer. A telegram intercepted by Japp revealed Langston owed £5,000, his engagement to Lady Eleanor a potential lifeline. You stood to gain her fortune, Poirot said, but only if she lived to marry you. Langston's composure cracked. I loved her. But yes, her threats to expose my debts. They stung. His missing vial, linked to Clara's poisoning, suggested complicity. But Poirot suspected a deeper alliance. The greenhouse, with its datura plants, offered another clue. The sacked gardener's alibi held, but a groundskeeper reported Poole visiting the greenhouse days before the murder, inspecting the toxic seeds. She asked about their potency, he recalled. Poirot's mind whirred. Poole, with access to the sugar and knowledge of cyanide, was a linchpin. Yet her buried letter, "Eleanor, your hypocrisy ends now," hinted at a personal vendetta, not mere theft. Poirot gathered the suspects in the drawing room, the storm's thunder shaking the chandelier. "Mes amis," he began, his voice a blade. The threads of truth tied him to Langston. Clara's locket suggested a motive of inheritance denied. Yet, her poisoning, confirmed by Langston as a minimal dose, hinted at a staged act to deflect suspicion. "Mademoiselle Clara," Poirot said, "you knew of the affair, but did you act?" She shook her head, tears falling. "I only wanted justice for my mother." The storm's crescendo matched the room's tension. Poirot paced, his little gray cells weaving the clues: the sugar cube, the vial, the diary, the shot. Langston's suicide was a ploy. But by whom? The note's forgery pointed to a mind orchestrating chaos. Poirot's gaze swept the suspects, landing on Poole. "The killer," he began, "is one who—" But a creak interrupted, the drawing room door easing open. A figure stood in the shadows, their silhouette fleeting, a glint of metal in their hand. Was it a weapon or a clue? The room froze, the truth teetering on the edge of revelation. Chapter 6. The Grand Revelation. The storm's fury had subsided, leaving Brynmere Pavilion bathed in the pale light of a rain-washed dawn. The Sussex hills, rolling beyond the estate's manicured lawns, glistened with dew. But within the pavilion's Art Deco halls, the air crackled with anticipation. The gunshot in the study, Dr. Victor Langston's staged suicide, and the shadowy figure at the drawing-room door had brought the investigation to a fever pitch. Hercule Poirot, his pinstriped suit pristine, his mustache a model of precision, stood in the grand hall, its marble floor reflecting the glow of a roaring fire. The suspects, Reginald Ashford, Miss Clara Hewitt, Dr. Langston, and Mrs. Edith Poole, gathered before him, their faces etched with dread, hope, and defiance. The chandeliers above cast flickering shadows, as if the pavilion itself held its breath for the truth. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his Belgian accent cutting through the silence like a blade. "The crime at Brynmere Pavilion is a tapestry woven with deceit. But yet your debts, £5,000 to unsavory bookmakers, tied you to her fortune. You supplied the cyanide, no? Not as the killer, but as the accomplice." Gasps rippled through the hall. Langston's face paled, his hands gripping the armrests. "Preposterous," he sputtered, but Poirot raised a hand. "Your vial, missing from your bag, was used to poison Miss Clara. A minimal dose, staged to deflect suspicion. You played a part, Doctor, but not the starring role." Langston slumped, his defiance crumbling, but he offered no confession yet. Poirot's gaze shifted to Reginald Ashford, whose pencil mustache twitched nervously. "Monsieur Ashford, your debts, £10,000, made you desperate. You wrote notes to your aunt, 'Your sins will find you,' hoping to sway her. A red herring, perhaps, but your presence near the tea tray and Clara's room betrays complicity. You supplied the poison, no? Unwittingly, perhaps, to another." Reginald's cigarette fell from his fingers, his Oxford accent faltering. I only asked Langston for help with my debts. I didn't know. Miss Clara Hewitt, pale but upright, clutched her locket, its silver glinting. Mademoiselle, Poirot said softly, your mother, Lady Eleanor's half-sister, was cast out, denied inheritance. Your grudge was deep. Yet your poisoning, a calculated act, no? A minimal dose to feign innocence. Clara's eyes brimmed with tears. I wanted justice, not murder. I saw Poole with the vial. I suspected. Her voice trailed off, her gaze darting to the housekeeper. Mrs. Edith Poole stood rigid, her stout frame trembling, her black dress stark against the hall's opulence. Poirot's voice sharpened. Madame Poole, it is you who wove this web. You are the killer. The room froze, a collective gasp echoing. Poole's scowl collapsed into a mask of anguish. Spilled like the rain outside, raw and unyielding. I took the cyanide from Langston's bag, laced the cube. I had to make her pay. Poirot nodded, his expression somber. You enlisted Langston, promising to clear his debts with stolen silver. Reginald, desperate, provided the means, unaware of your intent. Clara, suspecting, staged her own poisoning to shift blame. But her loyalty to her mother's memory stopped her from acting. He turned to Japp. Inspector, the case is clear. Madame Poole is the architect of this tragedy. Japp, snapping handcuffs on Poole, muttered, Blimey, Poirot, you've done it again. The housekeeper's sobs filled the hall as she was led away, her defiance drowned by guilt. Langston, implicated as an accomplice, faced charges for supplying the poison, his dreams of Eleanor's fortunes shattered. Reginald, chastened, escaped arrest, but not disgrace, his debts a lingering burden. Clara, tears streaming, clutched her locket, her quest for justice bittersweet. The pavilion, cleansed of its shadow, basked in the dawn's light. The guests, released from their confinement, dispersed, their whispers fading like the storm. Poirot stood on the terrace where Lady Eleanor's teacup had shattered and gazed at the hills. Ah, mon ami, he said to Japp, who lingered nearby. The passions. They poison more than any toxin. Greed, revenge, love betrayed. These are the true cyanide of the heart. Japp chuckled, shaking his head. You and your fancy talk, Poirot. But I'll give you this. You've a knack for sniffing out the truth. He clapped the detective's shoulder, a rare gesture of camaraderie. The string quartet, silent since the murder, resumed in the distance, their notes a tentative hymn to peace restored. The pavilion's roses, damp with dew, bloomed anew, their scent mingling with the promise of justice served. Poirot adjusted his hat, his eyes twinkling. The little gray cells, Inspector. They triumph once more, or so it seemed. Yet as the morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns, a faint unease gnawed at Poirot's little gray cells. Inspector Japp, his trilby hat tilted jauntily, clapped Poirot on the shoulder as they stood by the gravel drive. You've done it again, Poirot, he said, his cockney growl warm with rare admiration. Poole's in cuffs, Langston's facing charges, and the pavilion's free of its ghosts. But Poirot's green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, flickered with doubt. Mon ami, he replied, his Belgian accent precise. The puzzle is complete, yet one piece feels misplaced. The truth. It is like a fine tea. Sometimes a second steeping reveals a new flavor. As Poirot's chauffeured Rolls-Royce idled, a breathless maid, her apron askew, rushed from the pavilion's servants' entrance. "Monsieur Poirot! Inspector!" she gasped, clutching a small sealed envelope. "I found this in her ladyship's boudoir, hidden in her jewelry box." The envelope, addressed to H.P. in Lady Eleanor's elegant script, bore no stamp, suggesting it was meant for private delivery. Japp tore it open, his brow furrowing as he read aloud. "Monsieur Poirot, if I am dead, seek the truth beyond the obvious. My heart hides a secret not even C knows. Beware the shadow in plain sight." The note, dated the day of the murder, sent a chill through the morning air. Poirot's mustache twitched. A shadow in plain sight. Curieux. The discovery reopened the case, pulling Poirot back into the pavilion's opulent labyrinth. The grand hall, where Poole's confession had unfolded, now felt oppressive, its Art Deco elegance tainted by renewed suspicion. Japp, grumbling, summoned the key figures. Reginald Ashford, pale and disheveled. Miss Clara Hewitt, her recovery fragile, her locket gleaming. Dr. Langston, under guard but defiant. And Mrs. Poole, awaiting transfer, her scowl unbroken. "What now, Poirot?" Japp demanded. "That." The letters, however, were more troubling. One, unsigned, bore a chilling message. "Your blood will pay for your lies." The handwriting differed from Poole's notes, its angular strokes suggesting a new player. Another letter from a solicitor confirmed Lady Eleanor's affair decades prior, not with Poole's husband, but with a man named Charles Wentworth, a diplomat long deceased. Their child, Clara's mother, had been cast out, but a second child, unacknowledged, was mentioned. "Another heir," Poirot murmured. "Hidden in plain sight." Reginald, confronted with the will, erupted. "She betrayed me," he shouted, his pencil mustache quivering. "I was to inherit everything." His debts, detailed in the ledgers, tied him to a shadowy lender named Viper, linked to Langston's bookmakers. Had Reginald known of the will's change? His alibi for the tea tray remained shaky, and a new witness, a footman, recalled seeing him near the boudoir days before the murder. "I was looking for her checkbook," he protested, but his eyes betrayed panic. Clara's role grew murkier. Her locket containing her mother's photograph confirmed her lineage. But her staged poisoning, admitted as a ploy to deflect suspicion, suggested cunning. "I suspected Poole," she said, "but I never saw that will." Yet, a maid reported Clara lingering in the boudoir, handling Lady Eleanor's papers. Was she searching for proof of her inheritance or something else? Poirot's gaze lingered on her locket. "Mademoiselle, your mother's shame. It drove you, no? But to murder?" Dr. Langston, under guard, denied forging his suicide note. "Someone struck me, planted the gun," he insisted. The revolver examined by Poirot bore no fingerprints, a meticulous touch. Langston's debts, tied to Viper, suggested a pact with Reginald. But his engagement to Lady Eleanor complicated his motive. The pot, a shadow manipulating all. He produced the scarf, its silk shimmering. "Elsie, who is this? A child of the affair, hidden among us?" The room tensed, eyes darting. A breakthrough emerged. The solicitor's letter named Lillian Carver, a woman in her 30s, employed as a minor guest's companion at the tea party. Lillian, absent since the murder, matched the groundskeeper's description. Poirot's hypothesis crystallized. Lillian, the unacknowledged child, had learned of the will and sought revenge, manipulating Poole's grudge and Langston's debts. But where was she? As Poirot spoke, a creak echoed. The library's hidden panel, behind the portrait, slid open. A figure emerged, cloaked in shadow, clutching a vial identical to Langston's. "Lillian Carver," Poirot declared, his voice steady. "You cannot hide." The figure froze, her face pale but resolute. Was she the true mastermind, or another pawn in a deeper game? The truth, like the pavilion's shadows, waited to be unmasked. Chapter 8. The Final Unveiling. The grand hall of Brynmere Pavilion glowed under the chandelier's golden light, the storm's last echoes fading into a crisp Sussex morning. The Art Deco elegance of the estate, with its white stone walls and curved glass, stood in stark contrast to the turmoil within. Hercule Poirot, his pinstriped suit immaculate, his mustache a testament to precision, faced the assembled suspects. Reginald Ashford, Miss Clara Hewitt, Dr. Victor Langston, Mrs. Edith Poole, and the newly revealed Lillian Carver, who had emerged from the library's hidden panel, a cyanide vial in her trembling hand. The note from Lady Eleanor Brynmere, "Beware the shadow in plain sight," had reopened the case, casting doubt on Poole's confession as the sole killer. Poirot's little gray cells hummed, poised to unravel the final threads of a murder woven with deceit. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his Belgian accent slicing through the tension. "The crime at Brynmere Pavilion is a masterpiece of misdirection. Tapestry, piece by piece." The investigation had pivoted on Lady Eleanor's note, found in her jewelry box. "Seek the truth beyond the obvious." The safe, unlocked with the hidden key, revealed a will naming Clara as a beneficiary, and letters confirming Eleanor's affair with Wentworth, fathering 2 children, Clara's mother and Lillian. Clara, aware of her lineage, sought justice. Lillian, unacknowledged, harbored a deeper grudge. "You learned of the will," Poirot said to Lillian, "and saw your exclusion. Revenge, not inheritance, drove you." Lillian's presence at the tea party, as companion to a minor guest, had gone unnoticed. The groundskeeper's testimony placed her in the greenhouse, studying datura plants, source of the cyanide. The scarf marked LC found near the willows was hers, dropped carelessly. "You manipulated Poole," Poirot continued, stoking her resentment over Eleanor's accusations of theft. "You supplied the cyanide, knowing her access to the sugar cubes." Poole, in handcuffs, gasped. "She told me Eleanor deserved it, said it was justice for my sister." Reginald Ashford's role clarified. His debts, tied to the lender, Viper, linked him to Dr. Langston, but Lillian had exploited his desperation. "You, Monsieur Ashford, provided information," Poirot said, unaware of her intent. "You spoke of Eleanor's habits, her preference for sugar cubes." Reginald, pale, stammered. "I only talked to her about my debts. I didn't know." His notes, "Your sins will find you," were a red herring, meant to pressure his aunt, not kill her. Dr. Langston, his silver hair disheveled, admitted his complicity. Lillian approached me, he confessed, offered to clear my debts if I gave her a vial. I thought it was for other purposes. His staged suicide orchestrated by Lillian aimed to halt the investigation, the forged note a clumsy attempt to frame him. You were a pawn, Doctor, Poirot said, blinded by greed and love. Clara Hewitt's lock, your exclusion from the will, fueled a vendetta. You used Poole's rage, Langston's debts, Reginald's desperation, even Clara's loyalty, to weave a web of murder. Lillian's eyes blazed, the vial raised. She deserved it, she cried. Eleanor cast us out, lived in luxury while we suffered. Japp lunged, seizing the vial before Lillian could act. That's enough, he barked, handcuffs snapping. Lillian collapsed, her defiance breaking into sobs. I only wanted justice, she whispered, echoing Poole's own words. Poirot's expression softened, but his voice was firm. Justice, mademoiselle, is not vengeance. Your heart poisoned more than the tea. The pavilion exhaled, its elegance restored as the suspects dispersed. Poole and Lillian faced trial, their motives intertwined. Poole's personal grudge, Lillian's calculated revenge. Langston, charged as an accessory, lost his license and his dreams. Reginald, chastened, vowed to reform, his inheritance halved by Clara's claim. Clara, clutching her locket, wept for her mother's legacy, her justice bitter-sweet. Poirot stood on the terrace, the roses blooming anew under the morning sun. Mon ami, he said to Japp, the human heart, it is the true mystery. Greed, shame, love, they brew a poison stronger than cyanide. Japp chuckled, shaking his head. You and your philosophy, Poirot. But you've cleared the fog again. The string quartet, silent since the murder, played a gentle Elgar, its notes a requiem for peace restored. As Poirot boarded his Rolls-Royce, the pavilion gleamed, its shadows banished. To Brighton, he told the driver, where a café au lait awaits. His green eyes twinkled, the little grey cells at rest. Brynmere Pavilion, scarred but whole, stood as a testament to truth unveiled. Like fine tea, steeped to perfection, its bitterness. Poirot's green eyes, sharp as cut jade, lingered on the pavilion's facade. Mon ami, he replied, his Belgian accent measured. The tea is brewed, but a final sip reveals a hidden bitterness. Lady Eleanor's note, beware the shadow in plain sight. It haunts me still. Japp frowned, but before he could protest, a groundskeeper approached, breathless, clutching a small leather-bound book. Found it in the willow grove, sir, near where the glove was, he stammered. The book, its pages yellowed, was a journal. Not Lady Eleanor's, but Sir Henry Brynmere's, her late husband, dated 20 years prior. Its entries, inked in a bold hand, spoke of a business deal gone sour, a shipping contract swindled by a rival, Lord Archibald Carroway, the monocled peer who had cried, "Poison," at the tea party. Eleanor knows not the full treachery, Sir Henry wrote. Carroway's ambition threatens our legacy. Poirot's mustache twitched. Curieux, Lord Carroway, a minor guest, yet always present, no? The journal hinted at a feud that outlived Sir Henry. suggesting a motive beyond the personal vendettas of Poole and Carver. Poirot delayed his departure, summoning the suspects to the grand hall, where chandeliers cast a warm glow over mahogany panels. Reginald Ashford, his pencil mustache drooping, stood chastened. Miss Clara Hewitt, clutching her locket, seemed fragile yet resolute. Dr. Langston, under guard, glowered. Mrs. Poole, awaiting trial, sat in silence. And Lillian Carver, her auburn hair framing a defiant face, stared daggers. Lord Carroway, summoned from his nearby estate, adjusted his monocle, his florid face betraying unease. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice a velvet blade. "The case is not closed. A shadow remains, one that orchestrated the chaos from the periphery." The journal revealed Carroway's rivalry with Sir Henry, a grudge inherited by Lady Eleanor when she took over the shipping empire. Scoffed, but a servant recalled overhearing him urge Lillian to seek justice days before the tea party. The scarf marked LC, found in the grove, was a plant. Carroway's attempt to frame Lillian as the sole mastermind. Reginald's role clarified further. His debts, orchestrated by Viper, were Carroway's leverage. "You pressured him," Poirot said, "promising relief if he aided your scheme." Reginald, sweating, admitted, "He suggested I write those notes to Aunt Eleanor, said it would soften her. I didn't know about poison." Langston, too, was ensnared. "Lord Carroway offered to clear my slate," he confessed, "if I provided a vial. I thought it was for blackmail, not murder." Their complicity, though unwitting, fueled the plot. Clara's locket, bearing her mother's image, tied her to the affair, but absolved her of murder. Her staged poisoning, Poirot deduced, was a desperate act to expose Lillian, whom she suspected after seeing her with Carroway. "I overheard them in the garden," Clara whispered. "He spoke of ruining Eleanor." Poole's confession, while genuine, was incomplete. She acted under Lillian's influence, who was herself Carroway's pawn. The cyanide-laced sugar cube placed by Poole was sourced by Lillian, but Carroway's hand guided the plot, his motive rooted in a decades-old vendetta. The greenhouse datura, the monogrammed glove, the forged suicide note, all were misdirections, orchestrated to obscure Carroway's role. The anonymous note, "Your blood will pay," matched his secretary's handwriting. A subtle betrayal. Poirot gathered the suspects in a final circle, the firelight casting long shadows. "Lord Carroway," he declared, "you are the shadow in plain sight. Your rivalry with Sir Henry, your greed for Brynmere's wealth, drove you to orchestrate this murder. You used Lillian's vengeance, Poole's rage, Langston's desperation, Reginald's weakness, to strike at Eleanor." Carroway's composure shattered, his monocle fought. "Layers I didn't see." Poirot smiled faintly. "The truth, mon ami, is like an onion. Many layers, but all revealed with care." As Poirot stepped onto the terrace, the roses gleamed under the sun, their scent a balm. The string quartet resumed, its Elgar notes soaring over the hills. "The heart," Poirot mused. "It brews poisons of greed and vengeance, but also redemption." He boarded his Rolls-Royce, bound for Brighton, his little gray cells at peace. Brynmere Pavilion, scarred but resilient, stood as a testament to justice. Like fine tea, its final sip bitter, yet satisfying. Chapter 10. The aftertaste of justice. The Sussex hills, rolling gently beyond Brynmere Pavilion, shimmered under the late summer sun of 1932, their emerald slopes a quiet rebuke to the turmoil that had gripped the estate. The pavilion's Art Deco facade, with its white stone and gleaming spires, stood resolute, as if the roses on its terrace had absorbed the poison of Lady Eleanor Brynmere's murder and bloomed anew. Hercule Poirot, his pinstriped suit immaculate, his mustache a study in symmetry, lingered on the gravel drive, his departure to Brighton delayed by a final summons. The unmasking of Lord Archibald Carraway as the mastermind, orchestrating Mrs. Edith Poole's rage and Lillian Carver's vengeance, had closed the case. Yet the pavilion whispered of unfinished truths. Poirot's little gray cells, ever restless, sensed a final note in the symphony of justice. Inspector Japp, his trilby hat tilted with uncharacteristic ease, joined Poirot, the crunch of gravel under his boots punctuating the morning's calm. "Well, Poirot," he said, his cockney growl softened by satisfaction. "You've tied it up neat as a bow. Carraway, Poole, Carver, all facing the dock. Brynmere's free to breathe again." Poirot's green eyes, sharp as polished jade, gazed at the pavilion. "Mon ami," he replied, his Belgian accent precise. "Justice is served, oui. But the heart, it leaves an aftertaste." Lady tracing the locket that held her mother's photograph. "She knew," Clara whispered. "And she tried to make amends." Poirot nodded, his expression somber. "This letter, mademoiselle, it confirms the will, but also reveals Eleanor's heart. She sought redemption, no? Yet, it drew the shadows closer." Japp, peering over Poirot's shoulder, scratched his head. "Blimey, another secret. But Carraway's locked up. Who else?" Poirot's investigation, though concluded, took a reflective turn. The pavilion's grand hall where Carraway's treachery had been exposed now hosted a quieter gathering. Clara, Reginald Ashford, and a humble Dr. Victor Langston, spared prosecution but stripped of his license. Mrs. Poole and Lillian Carver, awaiting trial, were absent, their roles cemented. Poole as the hand that poisoned the sugar cube, Carver as the vengeful puppet, and Carraway as the puppeteer pulling strings through the shadowy lender, Viper. Yet Eleanor's letter hinted at a broader legacy, one that bound the living to the dead. Reginald, his pencil mustache less jaunty, stood by the fireplace, his Oxford accent subdued. "I was a fool," he admitted, his eyes on Clara. "Aunt Eleanor's will, it splits the estate. I'll honor it, Clara, and settle my debts properly." His reformation, spurred by disgrace, was genuine, but Poirot probed deeper. "Monsieur Ashford, you wrote notes to pressure your aunt, no? Did you know of Carraway's scheme?" Reginald shook his head. "He used me, promised Viper would ease off. I never suspected murder." A ledger found in Carraway's estate confirmed his manipulation, payments to Viper ensuring Reginald's compliance. Dr. Langston, his silver hair disheveled, spoke softly. "I was weak," he confessed. "Carraway offered to clear my debts if I provided the cyanide. I thought it was for leverage, not death." His love for Eleanor, once a motive, now seemed a tragic flaw. Poirot's gaze softened. "Docteur, your heart was ensnared. Bankrupt Brynmere through Viper, then seize its assets. Eleanor's new will, favoring Clara, thwarted him, prompting the murder. He used Lillian's vengeance," Poirot explained to Japp, "and Poole's rage, weaving them into his scheme." The sugar cube, the glove, the notes, all were his threads. But Eleanor's heart was the true target. The pavilion's library, its leather-bound tomes aglow in the firelight, became Poirot's final stage. He gathered Clara, Reginald, and Langston, the chandelier casting soft shadows. "Mes amis," he said, "the mystery is resolved, but its aftertaste lingers." Lady Eleanor sought to right her wrongs, yet her love invited death. Caraway, the shadow, exploited every weakness: greed, shame, vengeance. Clara clutched the letter, her voice steady. "She loved my mother, in the end. That's enough." Reginald nodded, his reformation sealed. Langston, broken but free, vowed to rebuild. Jap, scribbling in his notebook, chuckled. "You've a knack for hearts as much as crimes, Poirot." Poirot smiled faintly. "The heart, Inspector, is the true puzzle. It brews poisons, but also healing." The pavilion, scarred but whole, exhaled as the trio dispersed. Clara, now heiress, planned to honor Eleanor's philanthropy, Reginald to manage the estate, Langston to seek redemption elsewhere. Poirot stepped onto the terrace where the fatal tea had spilled. The roses, vibrant under the sun, seemed to nod in approval. The string quartet, restored to its place, played a gentle Elgar, its notes soaring over the hills. "Justice," Poirot mused, "is like tea. Bitter at first, but warming in time." He boarded his Rolls-Royce, bound for Brighton, his little grey cells at rest. Brynmere Pavilion, its shadows banished, stood as a monument to truth, like a perfect cup, its final sip complete.